and said I believed in it, and by about 54 I'd arrived roughly at this sort of mental conclusion at any rate, and was talking about it, was fool enough to talk about it, and therefore was obviously a crank and so on. But I was also a businessman. In my business I deal with the tycoon. It's a luxury trade. And by the time the tycoon had dealt with me in business, he realized I wasn't quite such a fool, and then he began to listen. And then people began to ask me to talk. And now you can have subject of flying saucers on a talk like this, and the BBC putting on a show like last night. This is the great growth of evolution. This is a great thing I think we owe people like Joseph Busby and his wife Louise, who are doing this sort of thing, and other people who've had other conferences like this as well. But you and I and the next bloke, whether we're Hindu, Muslim, Christian, or Russian, because there's nothing wrong with being an atheist. It's just another version of being some other thing. We've all got this evolutionary arc, and we have got to, on our own 2 flat feet, go and make the change. That, I believe, was the first question of why they didn't land in Hyde Park. Now, the next thing, let's bring in our friends, the Russians, because the atheist is a place. If there's anything that's true in this consciousness of the one life, whether it's a Jesus or a Muhammad or a Krishna or anything, they liked the lot. I cannot conceive of any of these beings saying, I like him, but I don't like him. I know we do that, and we have lovely wars about it, but I cannot conceive it of the beings themselves. And this is what I find with the sources. They don't care 2 hoots which part of the village we live in, planet Earth. Peloponnesian Islands or London, to them it's the same. There's a oneness of life. And they're just as interested in the cockroach as they are in any of the big medals that we so like. That was another thing. This very expression, flying saucers, I'll be talking of its origin in a minute, but its universality is the thing. With our nuts and bolts mind, we like to give it importance. This word isn't serious enough. We want unidentified flying objects, something which has got some more show-off in it. But the simplest peasant in Africa, or Asia, or in Mayfair, knows what a saucer is. It's universal, and it's simple. And this, to me, is again the keynote of sources. And this, to me, is again the keynote of anything esoteric. All the rest is show-off, separative, involutionary arc, as distinct from the beautiful, lovely, permeating, unifying, evolutionary arc of oneness. Now the Russians. I give you some nuts and bolts on this, please, if I may, because I feel they're trying to help us, the sources. And they're trying to teach the kid, half-grown humanity, that's all of us in our 3,000 millions around this village Earth, to turn from one to the other. And this is perhaps one approach they took to the Russians. There they're taught there isn't a God. It's just a variation of the one taught here where there is a God or a particular version of it. The oneness is still there, I believe. And the Russian Academy of Sciences began noticing some impulses from out in deep space. I've forgotten the name of the star they called it. It was some fantastic distance, like 100 million light years away. And they watched it for about a year. And at the end of the year, they gave out the frequency, the time, the place, and they asked anybody on the planet who was sufficiently interested to watch these impulses, because they believed it showed life in other planets. And you know, of course, that our astronomers, all our astronomers and so on, believe there's life in other planets. And if there are perhaps 1,000 million planets out there, if 10% are inhabited only, well, that gives you a huge number which have got inhabitants. And if only 10% of those are more advanced than us, with all our conceit, that gives you plenty of places from which sources can come. And the Russians gave these facts, and we were asked to watch for a year. And I don't know whether you remember in the papers a little while ago, several months, that it came out in a flare in headlines. The Russians say there's a super civilization out there. Next day also, Jodrell Bank says, oh no, it was only natural phenomenon, the thing was forgotten. But these were the facts behind. First, we'd been asked to watch for a whole year around the planet. Secondly, the impulses came through alternately like this: 100% strength, 80% strength, 100% strength, 80% strength. Now, we have no technology on this earth which can phase down that volume of strength from 100 to 80 and then bring it up to 100 again. It's beyond the wildest dreams of science fiction, and it answers the second question of contacts: what language do they speak? Here, it was mind to mind. Whatever language you did or did not speak, you could understand 100%, 80%, 100%, 80%. The thing was so strong, this signal, that it was almost an argument for it being natural phenomena. Then the phasing was so vast, 100 to 80 and back, that again it was an argument for it being natural phenomena. But the signals came out every 100 days. Now the coincidences of it being every 100 days, regularly phased, take it beyond the ordinary realms of possibility of natural phenomena. And it was on these bases that the Russians were asking us to look. And they said it was super civilization trying to contact us. Now, the point of all that is appealing mind to mind, making minds think round the planet, be it Russian, be it American. What happened? The easiest thing was just to deny it, which Jodrell did. But the thinking went on, and people began to realize it couldn't be natural phenomena. Then there was another question. If this thing came with the speed of light, 186,000 miles a second, and took 100 million years or whatever it was to come here, how did that bloke know that in 100 million years there'd be a thing here called Russia? And how communicate to it? And then we come to the other thing, that maybe these people move with the speed of thought. Maybe they don't go from point A to point B along that plane, but come to a within plane, we call it the mental, and then out again. And you could move as quickly as that to Venus and back. Because otherwise, how do you explain signals so long ago? Because there was another factor with sources. For example, radio waves go up to the ionosphere or somewhere like that and come down again in a given number of seconds. You can't hurry them, you can't slow them down. It's way beyond the wildest reach of science fiction. When sources are about, they often take the radio wave, hold it for 3 seconds, and then release it. Now that again is mind to mind. Any technician can understand it, and no technician has the faintest idea of how to do it. And again, it begins to make you think. And I believe that the second question that the contactee asked, why me, why not the government scientist, is related to the Christ not being born Caesar in Rome, but being in the local salt mines, and coming from the ground up, you can accept or reject. Muhammad came from the ground up, you can accept or reject. And in the acceptance or the rejection, you can listen to me or not, you think, you feel, you sense, you search, you seek, and you change yourself from involution to evolution. And you've got to do it yourself. That's my main point. It's not very dramatic. I don't believe truth is dramatic. It's not very sudden. Again, I don't believe truth is sudden. Not real truth. If it had been dramatic and sudden, Jesus would have just done it. He'd come here now. Krishna would no doubt join him, and so would the others. But it isn't done that way. Clearly it's not. We know that from history. And we've got to grow. We need these guides. We need these helps. We need these getting together. We need the phenomena in the sky. But it's your flat feet that you need as much as anything else to get you on your way. Why was the allegory of the Christ going through on an ass? What was the ass except you and I? What was the star upstairs except your inner self and mine? And what was the difference between your inner self and my inner self? All the spiritual content of this little village Earth and the spiritual content of a star 100 million light years away. Do you mean there's a separate God for that one and a separate God for this village? Or is there a oneness? And that oneness isn't linked in time, not limited to time. Did it really start a couple of thousand years ago or 10,000 years ago? You mean there wasn't a oneness before? Nuts and bolts scientists are finding relics of humanity now 80 millions of years ago. You mean there wasn't a God then? He only started up with a public school or something? Full of questions. Sources put it back straight to us. And they're not going to take sides in this village. Like this bloke, dislike that. This again was the gentleness of all the great people. They liked the lot, including the cockroach. Well, I seem to be nagging you, Mr. Chairman and friends. Didn't really mean to. I go on, perhaps, of these contacts, because these are the standard questions. Again, what do they look like? Where do they come from? What language do they speak? What food do they eat? And do they travel on number 11 bus? You know. The next period of research was into the types of sources. And it wasn't very long before we catalogued 16 different types. They range from the round things like that, about a foot in diameter, which are unmanned, up to big motherships. The biggest of the unmanned, we believe, is 3 foot in diameter. How do we get to it? Well, we've got friends around the planet, scattered around the planet. There are vast numbers of people interested in saucers. And on one particular occasion, we had 118 reports from one place in Denmark, where this saucer, this unmanned one, 3 foot in diameter, followed people, landed in the fields, was ahead of them, sort of circled, went off, and so on. 118 reports. In one of the 118, the thing landed by the side of a man riding one of these scooters, Vespa scooters, and it came up to the handlebars, and we measured up to the handlebars, which was just exactly 1 meter, and gives the diameter pretty neatly. These flying television sets, if you like, pick up not only sound and vision, but thought and feeling. Well, fortunately, one doesn't need to defend that in a gathering like this, because, for example, you know that Marconi, when he was, before he died, was working on a machine to pick up thought and feeling. And I'm sure most of us would be sensitive to auras and so on. We are going beyond the nuts and bolts, beyond the 5 senses. And these unmanned flying television sets not only pick up thought and feeling from you and I, not only seem to be able to focus so that saucer occupants can examine areas or individuals, even pinpointing down onto an individual, even if you like pinpointing onto the previous lives of the individuals, because the saucers all seem to take reincarnation for granted, as does most of this village Earth. It's only local parts of it which don't. And then they seem to be able to radiate influences. Well, we'd all go along with this. We know of magnetic centers. We know of all these things. Then the conventional saucer, which is like 2 plates, one above the other, which is 16-foot diameter, usually a crew of 2 or 3. These are the ones normally seen. Bigger versions, the motherships, and so on. Where do they come from? At least 4 different places. The mainstream, I believe, is Venus. Now, I'm awfully sorry if you're stuck with carbon dioxide clouds and 400 degrees centigrade. If there were time, I would go into it. Frankly, it won't stand up to critical examination at all. And any really open-minded scientist will tell you that at the moment it's merely a hypothesis. Disposing of the carbon dioxide cloud very quickly, the sources have always said it's a protective layer above the surface of the planet Venus. And this was hotly disputed on Earth till we sent up our Sputniks. And Explorer 3, the American Explorer 3, which was on its way then to the moon in 1958, with the best equipment aboard, when it was only 50 miles off the surface of planet Earth, was radioing back, there's no oxygen on Earth, there's no moisture on Earth, and therefore there's no life on Earth, because apparently 50 miles up that was the condition. But even most of us realize that at least there is some form of life on Earth, low or otherwise. And that sort of surface of protective layer became there. And then this 4,400 degrees centigrade business is absolute, I believe, easily proved guff. Would you like to think of the last one, the Russian experiment, which landed by parachute, and it took an hour and a half? Do you remember this in the papers? And then it was radioing back information. Well, you show me the parachute, which will stand up to 4,000 degrees centigrade for an hour and a half. And you show me the missile, which won't melt in 4,000 degrees centigrade for an hour and a half. That doesn't seem to have occurred to many people. And if you study, as I think one eventually must study, these esoteric subjects from within, I took Madame Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine on that, and the detailed way of how the physical elements were formed, earth, air, fire, water, and so on, and temperature, and the variations and different qualities of it on this planet and another planet. And there is an explanation of all this beyond the subject for today, but there is there. So there are 16 types of sources from 4 main places at any rate, of which the Venusian is the mainstream. By the way, tomorrow at 2 o'clock there's going to be another talk on sources, and I'm sorry to tell you, but I'm on it too, and we're going to take this Venusian theme particularly then, and particularly detail it with some colleagues. So I will leave that. Sorry, losing my thread. 4 types of sources, and these people. Now, they're coming here to help. The point is, why do they come to help? This struck me again very strongly, this esoteric side. Why did the Christ or the Buddha or Muhammad come to help? You see, what, for example, did the Christ want from you and I? What did he come here to get? Now, do you and I ever really give? You know, we'll have a tea party, we'll put out the tea cakes, we'll have our friends there, we'll be very happy if they eat the cakes, but we expect to be asked back. And if they don't ask us back, we'll give another tea party. And if those miserable lot of so-and-sos don't ask us back the 3rd time, we bargain. We don't give. Now, sources come here in love, And we can't understand it. If they came here to trade, if they wanted our plutonium or something, or they wanted to colonize the earth or something like that, as I say, we'd understand that. That would be fine. But they come here to help. And they don't land in Hyde Park. They see some little bloke and they say love, spiritual love. And man says, oh, well, I've heard that. I mean, anybody's been saying that. And this involution, evolution thing, this gentleness. And then the little man who's been had the contact says, well, what can I do? I mean, why don't you go to the Prime Minister? He'd come on TV and tell you, but what can I do? And he writes a book, and you and I don't read it. Did you know there are 220 books in English alone on sources? You and I don't read it. But you have come to listen to another bloke talking on it. And in this talk, in this rapport, consciousness will grow. Your consciousness will help mine, perhaps mine will help yours a little bit. In our joint interplay, it isn't you teaching me or me teaching you. That's separateness. That's a dead loss. But you and I together, each going help along and taking the cockroach along and that star over there. Not just my cricket team. This is the whole point. And if you sniff at the Peloponnesian Islands, it's too bad. It's time you grew. And if you're stuck in any particular form, it's just too bad. It's time you grew. Until you get out of that down form, you're not going to get very near either sources or gentleness. And that's true. And syrup doesn't help. And there's no syrup with sources. No lovely, dramatic guff-guff. No beautiful build-up. Initiation through you. Me. 3 and 9, cash down. On your own flat feet, you've got to reach it. And if you take one life or 44 lives, help yourself. It's up to you. Well, then my last point, why doesn't the saucer materialize here? And why can he take a contact and he not? What has he done to get this quality of gentleness? And I then came into technical jargon. What were beyond these 5 senses? Well, you remember I've just given you this very quick picture of the root races, the first, second, third, fourth, fifth sense, all of which we know, then the 6th and the 7th. Clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, whatever you like. Telepathy is now fashionable, and its sources which have brought it on, our program last night on the BBC mentioned telepathy. They twisted it to telepathic hypnotism from the saucer on you and I, which is a pity. But telepathy we know. When I was physically handling the saucer reports, which incidentally are still running at thousands of, hundreds of thousands a year actually, piles of the darn thing, and over again it said, I don't know why I went to the window, but this telepathic contact, something made me look up, over and over again. And this telepathy, of course, is part of this permeability, part of this oneness, part of this love of this arc, responsiveness. You've got to be sensitive to each other. I don't mean stupidly sensitive, but responsive in it. And it's again the quality of sources. This explains to me why they have such difficulty coming down to planet Earth. People say, why don't they come and have lunch? But if you really can read thoughts, as clearly they can, would you like to be on any city on Earth? London or Washington or Peking or Delhi or Moscow or anything? The thoughts that we've got, selfish, jagged things? If you really can read that, I'd rather sit in a dung heap with dung all over me. It's more pleasant. And then you look at it, the noise we have in our cities. You look at the emotional surges we have, the very extremes we have. We start coffee and ice cream, hot and cold, the extremes, all away from the midpoint of balance, the point of balance between the within and the without, between spirit and matter, between meditation and the outer world. All this midpoint, the center, where really one is humble, gentle, truthful, beautiful. And this beauty of the Venusian is the thing that shows through. They have it in their men, they have it in their women, because women come too. The earthlings who go for a ride all seem to have this inner beauty. It doesn't necessarily show through into the physical. It shows very often in their eyes. And don't we, in all our allegories of all our greater beings, have that quality inside, that within out? And it would come, if, continuing my story of the root races, we have come down to the 5th root race. The Venusians apparently are in the 6th root race, because there's more than one village in this universe. And in that 6th root race, they would give rather than take. They wouldn't bargain, they would have this love. They'd give that tea party without wanting the cakes back. And it would understand why they've been here helping this growing humanity for all these millions of years without recognition, without the big medals, quietly. And they've got to go on for a long time yet. And perhaps in the law of karma, later this humanity of this village earth will have to repay to another humanity, younger still, coming on. To me, that picture balances. And that's virtually the last theme. You've got to do it yourself. You've got to get the evolution change on your own flat feet. You have your examples. It is the gentleness and non-separatism, the non-dramatic, all this unifying thing which is the one. And then the last clue, the very expression, flying saucers. For those who have eyes to see, this year, by the way, is the 21st anniversary, the 3-7, if you're interested in numerology and things like that. Have you ever thought of that expression, flying saucers? It was June the 24th, 1947. Before that saucers had been seen, the Romans called them flying chariots in the sky, the Christians called them wheels in their Bible, the Vedas called them ships up there, other people call them lights, or everybody. But nobody had a common tag to unify them. And June the 24th, the anniversary is coming up next month, was this expression. Now, 24th of June, 1947, 24, the double 12. Always the 12 has been a mystic number. If you're Christian, the 12 apostles, the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 inner petals of the crown chakram, if you're an esoteric student, 12. The double 12, the night and day, the spirit and the matter, the good and the evil, so-called separates, actually one. 6, June, 6, the number of the new age. 1947, added together, 21, the 3 sevens. Where did he see them? Mount Rainier, a mountain, always the spirit as distinct from the valley. How many peaks did Mount Rainier have? 3, the Trinity, so often found in the exoteric religions. How many sources were there? 9, not the 10 of perfection of Plato, 9 of initiation, where you've got to do it on your own 2 flat feet first. And the 9 sources go in and out of the 3 peaks. What was happening at the same time? A conjunction of planets. Which planets? Venus, this 6th root race, spiritual love, and what else? Jupiter, higher mind, the inner consciousness. Now, was the whole of that an accident, or did you have eyes to see? And that really is my story, ladies and gentlemen. And I end where I began. Please, this is a personal viewpoint, and it doesn't implicate any association. Thank you.